Okay, a couple of things other that I wanted to show you really quickly that we didn't quite get to, but we've pretty much done the tour now. But I did want to show you the last couple of things in here. Again, this is the modules page where this is where everything is. So session 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can go through and you can take a look and see when we're going to be doing stuff, and it just, so you understand that. There is, in the course overview at the very top, there is a link here for course. It's called Flip Classroom Resource. This is all the retouching and compositing videos from 2022. Now, there's a lot of the content in this class that is the same as it was in 2022, but there's a significant, over this last holiday break, whatever, there was a pretty serious rewrite. However, if you are the kind of person that would prefer to see and experience what's going to happen in a class before you actually go to that class, this gives you the opportunity to do that. So for instance, let's say that you really want to get exposed to what we're going to do next week, but you want to get exposed to it before next week. If you click on this link, it will take you to a playlist on YouTube, and you'll see right here session 2 part 1, session 2 part 3, and there's a session 2 part somewhere, part 2 in here somewhere. You can click on this and you can watch this in the coming week, so that when we come into this class, you have some idea of what's going to happen. So some people like to work that way. I just try to make that available if that's how you want to do it. The way most people do it is that they will simply come to class, they'll experience it. All of the classes, as much as I can, I try to keep the lectures to a minimum and the actual working to a maximum. So you will be working on pictures every week that we are in this class, or something. So at any rate, and then you've got the recording of that class that you can then experience again during the week when you're actually working, doing a homework assignment that involves whatever we learned in this class. Does that sort of make sense, everyone? Did I lose anyone on that one? Okay, just so that you know that that resource is there. And then really quickly, I'm going to go over the assignments right now. I will tell you this right now. I treat you as complete, full-blown grown adults. I am not the hand-holding kind of guy. I am not going to go over assignments with you every single week and say, okay, now this is coming up. If I think that there's some gotcha in there, I'm probably going to not tell you that either. But occasionally I'll talk about something, an assignment, but for the most part, it's on you. So the assignments are all here in the Canvas site. So to the first one, if you click on it, it's just a discussion where you add a picture and say, and reply to a couple of other people. It's very simple. Pretty straightforward. Set up your system. We are largely going to do that in class today. So this isn't going to be anything you could have to do other than installing the software, that kind of stuff. Some of you may have desktop machines at home as well as your laptops. I would encourage you then to actually set up your desktops. I try to make my stuff as efficient and as fast and as efficient and fast. That's what I try to do in all of this. So that's how I'm going to try to help you set up your stuff as well. Complete the readings. There is only one reading. If you click on this complete the readings, it will take you to your session 1, and it's just this color primer. I'm asking you just to start this, not finish it, spread it out over a few weeks. Check out a Wacom tablet and then install the software. It's a pretty light week, even though there's 5 assignments, right? Are there any questions about this part? Okay. So the assignments are all listed right here. You'll see them. Make sure that, and the due dates are all there. Just make sure that you keep track of this stuff. If you take a look in your folders, though, so I need everybody to go to their Class 1 folder. So in your Class 1 folder, Students 01, there is just a PDF that has those same 5 assignments in them. But if you go to your class number 2 and you look inside of that, there's an assignment folder there. This is not only the assignment, which is right here, all spelled out in the PDF. These are the working files that you are going to need to complete this assignment. So the assignment folders inside of your sessions are all encompassing. Everything that you need is inside of those folders, and there's nothing extraneous in there. So just to make sure that everybody is on the same page about all of this. Okay. To that end, I want everybody to go to their Session 1 folder. Upgraded my system inadvertently. How many of you upgrade your system software like the minute the new one comes out? Like right now, I'm on, I think, Tahoe. I think that's what they call it. Windows 11 people are less. Yep, I'm on Tahoe, right? Had I known that that was going to happen to me, I would have shut that down. Hypothetical scenario. You've got the job of your life is going to happen tomorrow, right? Big job, something they're going to pay you. You stand to make 20, 30 grand on it. You got a crew of $250,000. Would you update your software the night before? No. When do you update your software? When you don't need it. Just throwing that out there. Okay. Last thing, and I don't think it's in here. Let me see if it's in your class 2. It's not in either one of these. Let me see if it's on our Canvas site. So again, I'm now looking at Session 1 resources, and lo and behold, it's right here, the next thing I want to talk about. So if you want to look at this with me, go onto your Canvas site, onto our Canvas site, go to your Session 1 resources, and click on this thing called File Naming Convention. How many of you people have a standard file naming convention for all the pictures that you take? And what is it?
The date, usually my tag, and then who I shot.
Right. So you use mine. Anybody else? A different one? Yes.
Usually I go last name first, and then date.
So you use your last name first, right? And then your first name, and then what else?
The date and the subject that I shot.
And the subject that you shot, right? Are you worried about remembering your name?
No, it's just something I put first. But
Just curious. So this is how I'm going to, well, not yet. How inconvenient. So has anybody else tried to load this thing, or is it not loading? Oh, well, here it is. So this is the naming convention that I use, and the reason I'm going to try to sell this to you is that this is best practice. Every professional studio that I've ever worked in uses something or a variation, very close variation of this. All the press people, if you're shooting for anybody like that, will be using this naming convention. It's very specific for a very set of specific reasons, and I want to go over those with you. I don't really care what naming convention you use. What I will tell you is this. How many pictures do you shoot in a year? Guess. 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, right? You do that for 40,000. Let's say 50,000 for 20 years is 1 million pictures. That is a lot to try to manage, to sort through, to keep. You need some structure in that. And as much as I know you all do your keywording religiously, none of us do that shit. So I'm going to actually offer you up what I think is a better plan in terms of how to do this stuff. So this is the one that I've been using. What I will say to you is this. You should adopt a system today and use it the rest of your life. You should not, in any case, any reason at all. If you do two systems, two naming convention systems, then you've got to have two libraries to search. You cannot search one because it's in a completely different system than the other. So you just complicate your thing. So there are people who say this to me all the time. Well, Verser, then, I've got thousands and thousands of files, whatever. Do not worry. Do not think about the stuff that you've already done incorrectly. Sometime when you get old in your old age and you're bored, you're retired, you've got nothing else to do, you can go back and rename your files that are 40 years old. Most of that shit you don't care about anyway. But you need to start today and go forward and never change it. And if you do that, then I can promise you this. I've been shooting digital since 2004. That's 22 years. I've got well over 1 million files, all in perfect order. I can find shit so quick it's ridiculous. So this is the one that I use, and it starts out at the very top. This is what the naming convention looks like. It starts out with a 4-digit year. Now, unlike the US, or unlike the rest of the world, the US does dates completely wrong. So in the US, most people will do a date format that starts with month, day, year. And if you do that, and then you go and you sort your library based on alphabetical sort, whatever, it will put all of your Januaries together, and it'll put all your Februaries together, and all your Marches together. That is not chronological order. That is a shit show. So you do the reverse. You start with years, and it's 4-digit. And most of you are not going to live for another, well, we're at 2026 right now. You would have to be, and you're probably all in your close to 20 anyway, right? So you would have to live well into your hundreds to reach the century that would be 2100. So there isn't a real need to put in a 4-digit year code, except that right now we are in, if you started this year and you got rid of the 20, because it's going to be the beginning of every single one of your file names. If you get rid of the 20, is the 26 a year or is the 26 a day? And then you don't know. So for instance, today, if we just put in our date for today and eliminated the first two numbers of the year, it would be 2602. And then what's our 2601, 27. Well, who knows what that really is? Is the 26th the year? Is the 27 the year? So again, if you put in the 4-digit code in the beginning, everyone will know. So it starts out year, month, 2-digit, always 2-digit, not 1. Do not put in 20261. It will then get put together with 11, and it'll be out of order. If you put in 01, it will stay in order. You'll have the whole chronological part. You can't miss it. So at any rate, and then finally the day. CCC, what this is a client code for me. I shoot for a ton of different people. I shoot for Neiman Marcus, I shoot for Bloomingdale's, I shoot for Saks, I shoot for all these different groups, whatever. This is a 3-digit code that tells me who that client is. If I shoot for myself, it's VER. But then right away, I can look at the first part of my naming convention, and I know when I shot it, and I know who I shot it for. Then there's another underscore keywords. That keywords is 8 letters. You need to keep that in mind. You cannot go over 8 letters in this naming convention. This is shit that you guys probably have never run into, but I'm going to tell you a nightmare story in just a second. But keywords, you have 8 letters to give some key to what the subject is, right? So for me, I'm shooting beauty for Saks. That's what I would put in here. So it would be, today for me, it would be 20260127 underscore SAK underscore beauty. So now I know when I shot it, I know who I shot it for, and I have a rough idea of what it was. If it was I was shooting kids, I could do kids. It can be less than 8 letters, it can't be more. There's another underscore, and then there's a 2-digit number. The 2-digit number for me is I divide my days up into, when I'm shooting fashion, outfits. So a typical outfit, number of outfits that I shoot in a day would be 20. So again, this allows me to make a distinction between this outfit and the next one. How many of you guys who shoot fashion all shoot it in one gigantic ass catalog or one gigantic ass session, and it's just named 01 through 5,000? You've got 15 outfits in there. It's a fucking shit show. You can't sort that. You got to go through all of that stuff every time. It is a nightmare. You need to get away from that. This will break it down into smaller segments, but still keep it together. Another underscore, and then there's a 3-digit number that is your frame number. That's usually supplied by software. So people come to me and say, well, Versa, you do fashion, I shoot weddings. What's this, the shot count? What's that all about? Well, think about a wedding, right? Shot 101, again, this 2-digit code that happens right after keywords could be the bride getting dressed in the morning. Shot 2 is arriving at the wedding. Shot 3, or arriving at the church. Shot 3 is the actual ceremony. Shot 4 is all the group family portraits that they do outside the church after it's over. Shot 5 is the trip to the reception. Shot 6 is the crazy reception. Shot 7 is when the bride and the groom are changing their clothes to get ready to jump on the plane and go. Shot 8 is hopefully they're taking you with them and paying you to shoot their honeymoon. That would be a really great job. So you can do this. It brings order and structure to your, and then you can go in and you can look at this and you can say, oh yeah, I remember I did Miguel's wedding, and it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, right? So I'm looking in the 2000, 4 or 5 years ago, 2022, 2020, I'm looking at that and I'm looking for Miguel's name. Do you know how fast I can find that shit? I'm not wading through images. I'm just looking at this. I've got my hard drive, terabytes of hard drive, are just endless lists of these categories that are all in perfect chronological order. This isn't just what you name your shootings. This is what you name every single file that's in there. So that then, when you've got frame number 308, you will have a raw version of it, but that's the one that you like the best. So you go ahead and you process out a Photoshop version of it. The only thing changes is the PSD. Instead of having a CR2 or an NEF or an ARC, whatever, instead of that raw file extension, it's a Photoshop extension. If you make a JPEG of it, only thing that changes is the JPEG. So all of the work that you do, all the iterations of that same image that you do, all stay together because they all have the same name. If you make a special liquify mask that's based on that, it goes in that. If you keep a log about your work, about how you actually did, what you did for the retouching, the log gets the same name as the file. All of this stays together and you are never looking, God, I can't find that. Where's the curve that I actually made for that I know I saved one that was right? Or you do color grading. It gets same name saved. Does that make sense? This will change everything. You can ignore this, but if you are serious about having a career and something that you want to manage, this is commercial grade. This is the only way that I work, and I'm just going to try to impress how important that is on you guys. So anyway, this is an explanation of everything that's in there. Please start doing something now. Again, do not let the fact that you've never done this before stop you from starting it now. That's the biggest hump most people have. Okay. I need everybody to fire open a version of Photoshop. I'm going to ask you to not do this in the beta version if you can. Does everybody have the latest version of Photoshop or a version of Photoshop? You can have multiple versions of Photoshop. The only reason I'm asking you not to do a beta right now is that we are going to set up our preferences for Photoshop. And just like everything, as the software evolves, they start to add new things. And so there are preferences that might exist in the beta version that would not apply to the standard shipping version. So I don't want to build a set of those because you are going to save these preferences so that when all hell breaks loose in your Photoshop, instead of you having to rebuild this again, you're simply going to take the file we built today or the folder and plug it right back into your Photoshop, and you will be able to start over with no issues. but I don't want to go backwards. You can always go forward. Whatever we're going to make today will be fine. So in my case, I've got the latest version is version 2026. And the irony of all of this is that if you look at Photoshop and you say about Photoshop, this is 2026, but the number that they always have for it is always a full number ahead. So the version of Photoshop is 27 for 2026. So that's either forward-looking or just stupid on their part. I would think that they would be able to figure that out. But I have a thing about Adobe, a love-hate thing, but at any rate. Okay, if you take a look at my screen, it probably looks very different than your screen does right now. Don't worry, this is a retouching space. We are going to build this for you. You do not have to work in this space, but it's what you will see for all of the videos, all the demos, everything that I do in this class for the next 15 weeks. You're going to see this space. What you will find is that the space is designed to give you the maximum amount of information with the least loss of working space. It gives you access to a lot of the stuff that we need really, really quickly. So anyway, this is the working space that we're going to ultimately build, but that's not where we're going to start. Speaking of grabbing a pen and a pencil, this would now be a good time to take out something to write this down with, because there's a couple of things that I need you to be sure that you understand about this. We're going to start off with the very beginning of all of this. So, I'll wait. That's okay. Then you'll be able to actually watch the video to rebuild it on yours, or you can download the other version of Photoshop right now. Okay. Up to you.
I'm trying, but it's not.
Don't worry about this. I will save a version of my preferences. Just go ahead and do it on the beta, because there may not be any new preferences. I don't know. I just know that there's the possibility. But then just remind me before you leave, I will give you a copy of my preferences that I build for the 2026, and then next week you can just load it in and you won't have to rebuild it. But go ahead and go through the steps of this, because it's important. I think, muscle memory. I want you guys, the last thing in the world, this is a good time to bring this up. The last thing in the world I want you guys is just to sit there. This turns into a 4-hour lecture, and that is too much to ask of anybody. You have got to be doing stuff. You need to be active in this. So to that point, when we get deeper into this class, like next week, and we actually start, well, in this class, we're actually going to start to work on images as well. If all of a sudden something is not happening on your computer, so if I say, okay, add this, blah, 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 and you don't have it, or you can't find it, or whatever, I need you to stop me. The thing that will kill this class is for me to have to stop every single 5 minutes and say, is everybody okay? Is everybody up to speed? Is everybody okay? It is an enormous waste of time. So I'm begging you, I'm telling you, you must read first, or no, wait, stop. That's not working for me. Stop, wait, hey. I'm really good at fixing things really fast. And then you can just continue on with the whole class. But if all of a sudden you stop and you just shut down, then you are just watching this screen, listening to this drone voice, trying to fight going to sleep. You might as well leave. So don't do that. Stop me. Don't hesitate. If I don't hear you, scream, stand up, wave your arms, throw the red flag. I don't know, do something. But that's not an issue. It only becomes an issue if you let it go on too long. Is everybody good on that part? Okay, everybody raise their right hand really quickly. Verser, I swear, say that. I will stop you if I get, for any reason I want. If I get lost, if I just want to know where, whatever. Okay, thanks. I'm holding you to that. All right. Jeez. Okay, so Preferences exist in two different places, for the Windows people and for the Mac people. For the Mac people, if you come up to the Photoshop window and come down to Settings and come over to General, we're going to start at the very top. For the Windows people, you actually go to your Edit menu and you get the same sort of thing down at the very bottom. It's called, it's either Preferences or it may be, what is it? Is it Preferences? Select that and it should bring up this exact same window. So the truth of it is, guys, there is no difference in Photoshop for Windows and Photoshop for Macintosh. The only things that really change are the key commands, some of the key commands. I don't use tons of keyboard commands. I do use a set. We will talk about that. I am never going to give you a quiz on keyboard commands. That's just not how I work. I don't have that kind of memory. So at any rate, we're going to start at the top. I'm going to go through pretty much most of these, not all of these. I'm going to explain what a few situations are, and then we're going to move on. So up at the very top, you want to make sure that you've clicked General up at the very top to start this off with. The whole part, if you have gone and done any changes in here, then I can't attest to what's in here. I will tell you in parts of what of this is by default, and the things that I change and why I actually changed these things. So the first thing that I'm going to do in general is say uncheck this auto show the home screen. How fucking annoying is it to get a home page for Adobe to be selling you shit? I just want to open my files. I want to get to my workspace right away. I don't need some, oh, here, you need a, do you know what Dreamweaver can do? Or do you know how fun Adobe fonts are? Let's go look at that. I mean, it's annoying for me. If you like that interference, then go ahead. I just want my Photoshop to fucking open up to Photoshop. So I uncheck that. Use legacy new document interface. Yes? No, but you're Mac. So you're Mac, so you're over here at Photoshop, down to Settings.
Oh, I see.
And then over to General. And you're good to go. Yes?
I don't normally use Photoshop on here, but for some reason it can't get me to the starter screen.
Yeah, this is exactly the thing that I was talking about doing. But this looks like Photoshop online. This does not look like the app. Have you downloaded the app?
I try to, but it always gives me like complications. That's why I just
Then during our next break, we're going to download the app. And again, I'm going to do the same thing with the guy in the back that you can go through the parts that we can get through today. And then other than that, I will give you the whole set of preferences, so you'll be fine. Okay, so again, I unchecked the home screen. I use this Use Legacy New Document Interface. It is much more intuitive. It's the old version of when you hit Command N or went up to the File menu and said New Window. It's the older version. It's more in depth and easier to navigate than the new one. So if you like the new one, you can stick with it. You're never going to see me do the new one. For me, the advantage of doing the old one is that you can it will pre-populate things like whatever's on your clipboard. It'll give you an image that's the size of your clipboard. It'll allow you to actually duplicate anything the size of an image that's already open, which is really critical for us when we get into compositing. So I hate the new window. I use the old one, and that's what I'm doing right here. Again, I'm giving you these as my suggestions, but what I find happens in this class is that there's a lot of people who will ignore this just because they're like, who the fuck cares whether it's this new window or that new window or that kind of stuff. But then it comes up that, oh, all of a sudden I need you to do this really quickly. And it's like, oh, well, I don't have that. And it's like, yeah, because you never changed to the one that I suggested that you might want to change to. It just makes things faster. Everything that I try to get across to you guys today is going to be about speed. So this comes to an important question that I'm going to ask everybody right now is, I've got a job to retouch. It's 10 pictures, full-length fashion. I just need a little cleanup on the face on each one. That's it. How much would you charge me? Nobody has an idea? Well, would you charge me by time? Would you say to yourself, okay, he wants just a quick cleanup, 10 minutes a shot, 10 pictures, hour and a half. What do you charge me for an hour and a half? What's an hour and a half worth to you? If you tell me minimum wage, I'm going to ask you to leave. Because you have a much lower opinion of yourself than I do. Hour and a half of work, $50, $100, $150, $200, $200. Does that seem worth it? So $200 for an hour and a half of work? Yeah, that seems like that. Yeah, that sounds pretty good to me, right? If that's the way you're really feeling about this, then my suggestion is that all of you, how many people in here have a relatively brand new laptop? Relatively new, last 4 or 5 years, right? I'm going to suggest to you, if you base your retouching on time, that you get rid of that new laptop. You find the oldest version of a laptop that will run the oldest version of Photoshop that you can possibly find, because it will take, instead of an hour and a half, it'll take you 3 hours. So instead of making $200, you'll make 4. And you can continue to extrapolate that on and on and on. Oh, well, it took me really 12 hours to do it. So now you're making thousands of dollars to do the same lousy 10 pictures because your computer's so fucking slow. You laugh at that, but that's how people think about this shit. My way of thinking about it is that you say, okay, I got 10 shots to do. Conceivably, I'm going to get this guy to believe that I'm going to take me an hour and a half to do it. So I'm going to say hour and a half, $200, and they say yes, and then I go in on a really fast screaming machine, knowing what I'm doing. I can bang one out in a minute. It takes me 10 minutes and make $200 for 10 minutes. That's $1,200 an hour. So you should know this about me. I am a commercial photographer. I am the only full-time faculty member that was. What's the single most important thing in your career? All of you want to be photographers, I take it, right? Or at least in the arts, possibly. Number one most important thing.
Reputation.
Say what?
Reputation.
Reputation, other things. Yes. I'm sorry? Time? That's an interesting one. I like that. But your work, right? Your art, you're giving back to society, your belief that you're doing something. Isn't that all important? All of that shit? Your connections, your network, all of that, right? All of that is wrong. All of it. The number one most important thing in your career as an artist, as a photographer, graphic art, whatever it is you want to be, is the money. It is the money. It is the money. It's the money. It's the money. It is the money. If there's no question, it's no other thing. If you cannot make enough money to do what you do, you will stop doing what you do. If you cannot make enough money as a photographer, you won't be a photographer. You'll be a hobbyist on the side. Tell your kids, your grandkids, that, yeah, I went to college to actually be a photographer. Well, what happened? How did you end up being an accountant? Couldn't make it work. Why? It wasn't because of your vision. It's the money. It's always the money. Does that sound like really crass? It's true. Okay, I digress. Heading on down. This use legacy free transform is critical for us. You don't have to check this now, but you're going to run into a lot of problems if you don't. When we get into compositing, we have to scale things to match up, and they have to scale in perspective in an image. And if you do not have this thing checked, you will not get a transform anchor point in the middle of your image, and then you will not be able to actually transform in perspective. So you can do this after the fact, but you might as well go ahead and do it now. That would be my suggestion. This beep when done, you should definitely turn that on. All of that is that when you go to do some action in Photoshop, and it takes a long time, you don't have to pay attention. Your computer will beep at you as soon as that Gaussian blur that you just ran on a 2 terabyte image is done, because it took 20 minutes to do it. Makes sense. Export clipboard. This is the worst memory hog of any program, I think, in the world. You want to uncheck this. RAM is incredibly important to the speed that you do things in Photoshop with. So you need to have as much electronic memory, which is what RAM is, free. Nobody, I can promise you this, nobody copies something in Photoshop and then takes it into another program to paste it. People export things from Photoshop. People will do those sorts of things, but you don't want, if you copy a 1 gigabyte file to your clipboard, you are going to cripple your machine because of this. It's going to keep it in there. That clip, you can quit Photoshop. It's still in your clipboard. It's still robbing from everything else. While we're on this subject, and this is the shit you should be writing down because it's not part of this. How many people of you have a browser open when you work in Photoshop? Deadly. How many people have Chrome open when you do Photoshop? What do you guys use? Other than, not, but the Chrome users, yeah, but the rest of you, browsers. Yeah, you all use Chrome. We all do. Biggest memory hog in the world. You are crippling your machine. So how many of you have Chrome going and Spotify and your email open and all? You are crippling your machine. If you want to do serious Photoshop work, you close everything down except for Photoshop. Everything. If you have to open a browser, great. Go to the browser, get what you need, and then close it. Your machines will go 10 times faster. Well, that may be an exaggeration. But again, put the music on your phone. Don't do it on your computer if you're working in Photoshop. It's just eating up memory, and memory is the thing that Photoshop relies on the most. It's putting these files that you're trying to manipulate into that memory, and it's doing the changing around, adding colored layers, all the inside that memory. And if you have all of these other programs that are also vying for that memory, again, you are crippling what Photoshop can actually do. So do not do that. The rest of this we can actually leave at its at whatever defaults you have. If you go to the next one down, interface, I'm going to leave all of this at their defaults. Yeah, you can actually change your screen. Some people will argue to do this for color correction. They would say to actually have a white base like this. The problem in doing a white base like this is that our eyes adjust to color automatically. So, well, if you guys have ever shot in mixed lighting, have you ever taken a picture inside of a room where you had a tungsten light and a daylight window? And the two have two completely different colors. The tungsten light is very warm compared to the daylight. So if the daylight is corrected and neutralized, your yellow tungsten light is hyper yellow. If you color correct for the daylight part, for the tungsten part, whatever, it actually then doubles the blue of your daylight that's outside the window. That's what's happening. So your eyes, though, you don't see it that way. When you look at the window, it looks normal. When you look at the tungsten light, it looks normal. Our eyes automatically adjust for that. What our eyes do is they pick the lightest thing in our scene, and then they neutralize that. Well, this whole background becomes this. So you're not looking at neutralized color in your image. You are looking at a neutralized color on a screen. So if you ever hear anybody tell you to do this, you know that you don't ever want to work for them. You don't want to listen to them. You certainly don't want them to owe you any money. Anyway, you can do black. The problem that I find with black is that sometimes things get really difficult to read. It's a little too strong. So I go for the one that's right next to the black. It's also the default. The rest of this you can leave at normal. Workspace, this is where I have a big issue with how Photoshop works. Now, again, this is a strictly preference on your part, so just take it for what it's worth. But this open documents as tabs or this enable floating document window docking, both of these are what create tabbed behavior inside of Photoshop. So when you open a single image in Photoshop, it just floats. But when you open a second image in Photoshop, they go up into a tab configuration. And one of them will be actually showing, and the other one will be hidden as a tab. And you need to then click on the tab to see the second image. And browsers do the same thing. I mean, you get tab behavior in a lot of software programs. The problem in Photoshop is that when we're compositing especially, I can have 5 or 6 images that are open, and I'm dragging one element from one image to another, and I have got to memorize which tab has that other image that I'm trying to put that element on. It's a nightmare. So for me, I have all of my images. They never go into tabs. They always stay open. And so there's nothing that I can do that does tab. Now again, That's not a big issue when we first start out in the work that we're doing because we don't have a ton of multiple images open. But the minute I'm telling you, you get 5 or 6 images open and you got to remember, oh, I'm taking this head and putting it on that body, and which screen is that, and I don't know where it is, and all of that, absolute nightmare. So I unchecked both of those. Again, that's entirely up to you. Notifications, in terms of doing this, so Photoshop now, and most of you experience this, is if you hover over any tool in Photoshop, you'll usually get a little name about what the tool is. So it'll be like paintbrush or pencil or lasso tool or something like that. Those I actually like, but they've added more and more and more to this. So they now have, it's gotten to the point now where if you hover over that tool long enough, you get a little video that actually shows you what the tool is, how to use it, all of that kind of stuff. Who the fuck wants that? I just want to get the paintbrush. I don't need to go through the video to get to the paintbrush. You know, I just don't do that. So anyway, for me, I uncheck this all enable quiet mode, and then all of this stuff, the rich tips, the what's new, the feature, I get rid of all of that stuff. I don't want to do that. I do want the tool name to actually show up. I keep that part. The tools themselves, in terms of doing all of this, all of those are fine. All of this is fine. You can leave that at its defaults. The history log. Anybody ever use this or know what it is? So what the history log is that if you click on this, it'll actually open it up and it'll say, you can save your history. It's basically what you do in Photoshop. You can save that to something. So if you click on the top part and you just say metadata, what it'll do is so basically the way mine is set up right now, because I've also got this sessions only drop down. Sessions only means every time you open a Photoshop file and every time you close it. So it's time stamping. It's a way that you could actually track how long you spend time working on an image. And if you're a professional retoucher, that actually might matter. However, putting it in the metadata means it's actually just with the image, and you've got to open the image to get it out. Instead, you could do a text file. That's what most people do. You would click on text file, and then you would click on choose, and then you could name the text file for the image. What would you name it?
Year, month, day.
You name it after your file name so that you know that this is the retouching history for this file. Again, we go back to file naming and how important that all is. So at any rate, I'm not going to do that, but that's what I would normally do. And you can do both. You can embed it into your image and you can also embed it to this. However, session only doesn't really help you a lot. It's just, okay, he opened it at 10:06 and he closed it at 2:30, whatever. If you go to the next one down, concise, what concise will do is it'll not only give you those times he opened this image at 10:06, and then he selected the paintbrush, and then he selected the lasso tool, and then he selected the marquee tool, and then he closed the image at whatever. That's what concise is. It doesn't really help you, but this last one down here does. And if you are thinking about becoming a retoucher professional, this is what you want to use, and you do this for every job that you have, because what detail does is it not only does opening and closing, it not only does tool selection, but when you actually select a paintbrush, and if I do this, that's an entry in my history. Another one. Every single move that you make is recorded in your history. Those histories they can get to be hundreds of pages long. You should just try this one time on a long retouching session you do. You'll be shocked. And why on earth would you do that, right? The reason that you do that is that on a single given image, you won't see this on the video. On a single given image, you can end up with a history file that looks like this. So when the client says to you, yeah, I know we agreed on $2,000 for that retouching job, but I don't think that's worth it. I'm giving you $1,000, take it or leave it. Then you walk in with this text file and you say, that's what I did for you, fucker, give me my money. It's very hard to argue with that. I mean, they get encyclopedic. That's what you want. Just saying. Trying to give you all careers. Okay. In my case, I'm not going to do history log. And the next part down, the content credentials. This is in beta right now, and this is new. Right now, the default on this is none, but what this is ultimately supposed to do is flag anything in your metadata that was AI generated. So if the entire image is generated, it will reflect that. If you do a small generation for like just I need another, tree, or you remove something using AI, whatever, it all gets put into this thing called credentials. And then when you go to open a file, when somebody goes to open a file in a given system, it will actually read these credentials, and then you can go in and look and you can see what was modified, how it was done, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. This is all in beta right now. I'm going to suggest you leave that alone personally right now until they work that part out. And it's the same thing right down here for the export as options here. I'm going to say when they get this worked out a little bit better, maybe we revisit this, Miguel.
Just a question. This is also going to be on YouTube to reference this to? That's what we're learning here on class.
So I'm recording this right now.
Yeah.
And it will be on YouTube probably tonight.
Okay.
And I'll send you guys a link. I'll put out a link. File handling. You can leave this as it is. The only thing that you might want to do in this is two things that you need to change in here. The first one is the file saving options up at the top. I'm going to leave this all at its default, but this thing right here, automatically save recovery, is not on by default. You want to enable this, and then you want to click on this little drop-down menu and do every 10 minutes. You could do every 5 minutes. What this is about is that if you have an unexpected crash in your computer, you will not have lost the entire file since your last save. You will have lost it since the last one of these, whatever these increments is. So it does a temporary file save, and then it gets updated every 10 minutes. So if there's an inadvertent crash, if this is set to every 10 minutes, you cannot lose more than 10 minutes of your work. If it's set to every 5, you can't lose anything more than every 5 minutes to work. I'm really good and disciplined, and I stress saving quite a bit in here, so I'm not as concerned, but you definitely want this enabled. This is not, how many of you guys have ever run into the dreaded scratch disk error? Scratch disk is full, and then you can't fucking do anything, right? You can't quit, you can't save it, you can't do anything. We'll talk about why that is. This thing will at least help you out of that box a little bit. It's not as good as discipline backing up, but it's better, certainly better than nothing. So you definitely want on there. I do not use any of the legacy save as kind of stuff. This is a fight between Adobe and Apple about why this actually exists like this, but it's just not that much trouble to do a save as, so I'm not going to change anything else about that. In your camera raw preferences for file compatibility, here, I'm going to leave this. I don't know if they've got this. You guys need to tell me whether this is checked or not before, but no, that's not what I want. 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 No, don't worry about any of this. We'll get to the camera raw preferences in just a second for what I'm looking for here. So you can leave the rest of that just like it is. And the export part right here, this is set up to do a quick export of PNG. I would leave it at that. I think PNG is actually pretty superior now to JPEG. PNG supports a larger color gamut. It also supports transparency. It does things that JPEG won't do. So that's how I'm going to leave it. However, I do in all the quick export stuff, because typically when I'm exporting something out, it's always going to be for online. And sRGB is the de facto workspace online, color space is online. So you always want this to just be automatic. You can always turn it off when you're actually doing the export, but 99 times out of 100, you're gonna want to have this thing on. Performance, in this part right here, the default in performance, again, this is how much memory is being allocated to Photoshop. So this is the problem that you run into. So Photoshop is getting, in my case, 70% of my RAM, but all of a sudden I've got Chrome open, Spotify open, Word open, Excel open, I've got all this stuff open. It starts eating into this memory. And all of a sudden, after everything is said and done, I'm only really sharing half of this part, and it causes all sorts of heartache and confusion. So don't have extra programs open. But if you've got a computer that's got a lot of RAM, so how many people in here have 8 gigabytes of RAM? 16. 16, I would leave it at 72%. How many here have 32? Well, you can get up to 32 gigabytes of RAM, 64, 128. If you get into those big machines, you want to crank this usage way up. You need to keep a small amount of RAM for your computer just to function. So the OS takes it. You cannot ever take this thing all the way up to 100%. Your computer will just freak. So you can't take it all the way up there. But in my case, I've got 24 gigabytes of RAM in here. I could probably pop this up to 80% without causing me any trouble. But the people who've got like 128 in a desktop machine, they can crank it up to where they're using 100, they're using, 100 gigabytes of RAM for that. That you don't need more than, I would say like 5 gigabytes for your overhead is fine. So for me right now, I've got this up to 72, but that's actually, I'm looking at the difference right here. It's 13 gigabytes of RAM difference. I can pop this thing up. Again, you get better, faster performance. You can leave all of this part down here as at its defaults. This graphic processor part, is yours all turned on? There'll be a little check mark right there. So how many of you have ever used the Liquify tool in Photoshop in this class? Have you ever been working in Liquify and all of a sudden your image starts to break apart like in checkerboards? It gets really weird. Your image won't want to write. There are problems between some of the software and using this graphics processor. Normally you want to leave this thing on because it makes your Photoshop screamingly fast. But there are things in Photoshop that break horribly when this thing is turned on. So when we get to those, I will actually show you what one of those looks like. This is where you go and you have to temporarily turn it off. But 90% of the time, even 95% of the time you're working in Photoshop, you want this thing on because it's offloading all of the graphics processing onto that thing. And that's what Photoshop actually is. Your history states, you can leave it its default, 50 history states. We'll talk about what that is a little bit more later. Image processing, when we come down to here, the only thing I would ask you to change on this is the select subject and remove background. There's a drop-down menu. You want to change this to cloud. Now you can change this inside of Photoshop on an image-by-image basis, but this is just what the default's going to be. So if you don't manually go in and change it for every image, it's the default. Sometimes the work that you do on your device, your AI selections and that kind of stuff on your computer are actually better than the stuff that's online. But certainly if you're in a situation where you can't get online, then obviously this becomes a moot point here. But more often than not, you want to have this enabled. So that's where I would actually put it. But again, realize that you can change it on an image-by-image basis. Scratch disks. How many people in this room have any idea what a scratch disk is? Oh, yeah, I would just put more stable. Everything in the world you want to be more stable. Sorry, I didn't realize that that's what it was by default. Okay, scratch disks. What the hell is a scratch disk? But all of you have been bitten by it, right? Scratch disk is full, and then you're just locked up. You can't do anything except quit Photoshop. So I'm going to pause the video right now because you're not going to be able to see this. Okay, for the Macintosh people, and I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how to do this for the Windows people, but I think if you do the Windows people, you tap me at the end of class and we can go online and find out how to do it. You need to find out how much available space that you have on the hard disk that's in your computer. That's what you need. So for the Macintosh people, if you go to your Finder, and I'm going to do hide everybody else so that I can actually see what's on my Finder. In most cases, most of you can no longer actually see your hard drives on your computer like I can. Is that true? That's a mistake, I think. I think you need to be able to see these things so that you can work with them. If you want to be able to see them, you simply come up to the Finder, down to Settings, and in general, you check all of these. You want to see your connected servers. You want to see DVDs or CDs that are plugged into your computer. You want to see external hard drives. You want this shit available to be able to see, and the fact that they do it off by default beats me. But at any rate, I'm going to click on my hard drive, then either come over to the File menu and come down to Get Info, or just hit Command-I, and a dialog box will open up, and in this it will say what my capacity is. You can see it's 994.66 gigabytes. It's a 1 terabyte drive. What's missing there, that little bit of difference between this and the terabyte, is the overhead of the drive itself. But then underneath it, you can see what's available. I've got 189.61 gigabytes. So here is the rule, and it's the thing that is going to bite most of the people in this class. To have a functioning computer, you need that free available space a minimum of 10% of the size of your hard drive. So in my case, I've got a 1 terabyte hard drive that's 100 gigabytes. That's not 100 gigabytes, it's 1,000 gigabytes. So I need 100 gigabytes free space for my computer to function properly. If you don't, you are crippling your computer. Most of you guys, not most, but a number of you are going to have a 250 gigabyte hard drive in your computer. That means you need 25 gigabytes of free space, and I would bet serious money that there's someone in this room that doesn't have even 10. So see this available, the format right here. This is the capacity, right? It's 1,000 gigabytes. I need 10% of that available, right? In my case, I'm good. I've almost got 20%. I've got 18% of mine is available. And I've got a lot of stuff on my computer that I'm ultimately going to pitch. But most of you have got smaller hard drives, and you keep everything on your computer. You've got all your movies, you've got all your whatever you've got. You need to get that shit off. You need to get a minimum of 10% free space on your computer. I'm not talking about RAM here. I'm talking about, this is your hard drive. This is the space on your hard drive. So that's what you need to do. The Windows people, again, I can certainly help you, but I know that there's an easy way that you can look on your Windows to see how much free space you've got on your hard drive and how big your hard drive is. So like I said, I'll look it up during the break, which we're going to take in 1 second. Does this make sense to everyone? All right. Guys, you've got to get that stuff off. Buy an external hard drive and pull all that shit off so that your computer can actually do what you're asking it to do. Okay. Going further down, we're almost done. In terms of the cursors, the next one down, you definitely want the normal tip, not the full brush tip. And you also want to do the show crosshairs at the tip. So instead of what will ultimately happen is that we're going to have a brush. It's not going to look like a paintbrush. It's going to look like a circle. It's going to have an X in the middle that gives you its center point, so that gives us precision. So if we're really trying to copy a pixel to pixel kind of thing, that sort of exactness, we can actually do that. In terms of the other cursors, you change it from standard to precise. Again, nobody uses the little paint bucket to fill. Nobody uses little, paintbrush that looks like a paintbrush to work with. You do not want your cursors like that. You want them very precise, and you know what they're doing, where they are, and not some little icon-y illustration. And the rest of that you can leave as it is. The next one down, transparency and gamut. We're almost done. The gamut warning by default is a middle gray. That is of no help to us at all. So what a gamut warning is it's showing you colors that can be out of a space that you want to see what is outside of that space. So for instance, most of you guys know that your computer screen can show you more saturated color than you can get in a print. What gamut warning will do is it will actually show you on screen what will not print. So to be able to see it, you want it to be shockingly bright. So if you click on that, it'll open up the color picker. So click on that gray color, open up the color picker. You'll see that there are RGB settings that sit in the color picker. If you swipe across the very top one, the red one, and type in a 0, we want 0 red. If you hit your tab key, it will take you down to the green space. You want to type in 255, hit the tab key again, and then 0 in the blue. And you will have this shocking neon green in your thing right here, and click OK. We're going to talk about color a little bit later on. In terms of the units down here, we're going to leave this untouched. The grid lines, we're going to leave those untouched. The plugins, the one thing you want to do in the plugins is enable developer mode. Sometimes when we're trying to load third-party plugins or that kind of stuff, this can get to be this can get in your way. If you don't run into those problems, you'll never know that this thing is enabled. It just keeps something from the future screwing you up. So go ahead and enable that part. In terms of the enable generator, we are going to leave all of this stuff off. And then we're going to come down to type. In the type, I'm going to leave that all at its defaults. In the enhanced controls, you can do this show tooltips property adjustments. You can do that part. That's in a toolbar. And then finally, technology previews. And in the technology previews, I do want you to enable the preserve details 2.0 upscale. You don't need the second one. The precise color management control, you can turn that on. If you have a brand new Mac, you'll take advantage of this. If you have an older one, this won't matter. It won't do any damage. Preserve previews for 16-bit documents. I would go ahead and enable that. I would not bother with OpenJPEG and then enable modern user interface, of course. And then say OK to that. We're almost done, and then we'll take a quick break. So that takes care of the preview part. If you come back up to the same thing again, come down to settings. You didn't have this before, but now you should see at the very bottom camera raw. These are the camera raw settings. I want you to go ahead and open that part up. And in this, as we start at the very top under General, again, this Show Rich Tool Tips, you can uncheck that or check that. If you're not super familiar, they've been changing Camera Raw quite a bit. So I might encourage you leave this turned on for just a little while until you're maybe used to some of the other versions of that. The Targeting Adjustment Tool, you don't need to use the legacy one. The one they've actually got is fine. If you're the kind of person that when you go into Camera Raw, you want your thumbnail images along the bottom, that's the default. You would go ahead and leave this at horizontal. I like mine on the left-hand side, so I pick vertical. That's how mine, it's a personal preference on your part right here. The rest of this you can leave until you get down to use legacy, undo shortcuts. Yes. So you need to, are you Macintosh or Windows? Okay. Up to the Photoshop name, the thing that says Photoshop at the top, down to settings, down to the very bottom, Camera Raw. It's divorced. It's a separate thing from, I don't know why they do it separately, but they do. Okay, then, so if you've been working in Adobe Photoshop products for years, what happens is that when you would want to go back in space, so you did something and you wanted to undo it, you hit Command Z. But if you hit Command Z, it would then go right back to the thing that you just undid. And Command Z would just go back and forth between those two states. If you wanted to go progressively further back in history, you had to add the Option key to that. So it was Command Option Z would then step you back all of your history as long as they could remember your history. So that's the way it always used to work. About 2 years ago, they changed that. And now what happens is that if you hit Command Z repeatedly, it goes back in history. If you want that just flipping back and forth between two states, you do Command Option Z. It's whatever you're comfortable with. I grew up on Command Option Z as the way to go back in all of history, whereas Command Z just went back and forth between the two last states. So I enable this because it's how I've always worked. You guys can do whatever you want. In terms of file handling, we can then talk about this. So in the file handling part, it used to be that if you wanted to leverage the power of Camera Raw on a JPEG or a TIFF file, you could bring it into Camera Raw. Now, it's a little disingenuous because Camera Raw was designed to work on raw files. A Photoshop file or a TIFF file or a JPEG is no longer a raw file. It is a baked file. It has been developed and saved. It's baked. So what Photoshop has done now is they've actually put in a Camera Raw filter that allows you to use all of those tools on these baked files. So it used to be that people would actually enable this stuff. There's no reason to do this anymore, so I disable all of this. There's no reason for you to do that because the baked file inside of Photoshop using the Camera Raw filter gives you the exact same thing. So performance, as we come down here, you can leave all of this at its defaults. The defaults you can leave at its defaults. We are going to actually, you don't get to set this up here. We're going to set this up in Photoshop later on. Workflow, this part does matter. So the workflow that we use, how many people in this room are using ProPhoto, RGB? Most of you, if you've never changed your Lightroom settings, are. Because if you bring an image out of Lightroom into Photoshop, unless you've changed Photoshop's preferences, Lightroom's preferences, it comes in as a ProPhoto file. The problem that you have with a ProPhoto file is twofold. The first is the color space is so big, it goes outside of what human vision can see. That's a problem. And number two, you have to be working in 16-bit or you will fracture your image. And 16-bit is twice the file size as 8-bit, so everything that you do will be twice. The storage is twice as big. If it takes 10 seconds to run a filter on an 8-bit file, it'll take 20 on a 16-bit file. There's no inherent reason to be working in 16-bit ProPhoto. You can't see it. There's no monitor that's made that can show you ProPhoto. There's just a cornucopia of reasons. So our suggestion, and again, if you want to stay in ProPhoto, that's fine, but you have to be in 16-bit. So for you, you would click on this drop-down menu and pick ProPhoto RGB, but you would have to change this to 16-bit. In this class, and what I do in my own personal work, is I work in Adobe RGB, and I do it in 8-bit. It's everything that I need. Questions about that one? We're almost done, guys. Image sizing, you don't need to worry about any of that here. You would definitely not do output sharpening when you are bringing files into Photoshop, because how do you know what your output is going to be? You change your output sharpening. If you're going to do a postage stamp, is completely different than if you're going to do a billboard. And how do you know what you're going to do? So you would never do your sharpening here at this stage of the game. And then finally, how many of you work with smart objects? That will change next week. Everyone will be working with smart objects by default. So this click right down here, open in Photoshop as smart object, I want you to enable that right now. We can always turn this off, but for the time being, I want you to enable that. And then finally, technology previews. I'm going to actually enable this. So this will show you some of the beta stuff, some of the stuff that's actually in beta. They sort of let it kind of work a little bit in the shipping versions of Photoshop. So anyway, that part's set up. We got one last thing to do, guys, and then we're going to take a break. And the final thing on this is almost the most important thing on this. So this is on the edit menu for everybody. It's on the edit menu for the Mac people and for the Windows people. Click on your edit menu and come down to color settings. In color settings, when this opens up, by default, they use North American General Purpose 2. There's huge problems with this. The first is that the default space is sRGB. We want to be working in Adobe RGB. It's a bigger color space. It's closer to what our monitors can show us and what our cameras can really capture. It also then, all of the color management policies that they have right here are simply to preserve embedded profiles. That's not what we always want to do. Every now and then we want to actually change these things. If I open up a file that I'm trying to steal something from, I'm working in Adobe RGB. I pull it off the internet. It's in sRGB. This is going to say, don't make that adjustment. I don't want that. I want it to understand that I'm switching these things. But the worst thing about this is that all of these mismatch warnings here are turned off. You want to know if you fuck something up. You want Photoshop to tell you. So instead of having this general purpose 2, click on the drop down settings. You want to pick North American Prepress 2. This now will give you Adobe RGB as your color space. It preserves everything, but most importantly, it turns all of your warnings on. So if you're trying to do a color mismatch in this, it'll bring up a dialog box and say, do you realize that you're trying to do this? How do you want to handle it? So at least you know. If you have it turned off, you just fuck up all your files. So the biggest problem with this, you've been working in ProPhoto forever. You've got really big color space, beautiful, whatever. You don't know that, and if I had mine settings like I had them before, I could open your file. You would have no idea that it had just dumbed it down to sRGB, and the minute that file got saved, that sRGB would destroy all that big, beautiful color that you had. So yeah, this is an important one, guys. So anyway, I'm gonna say okay with that. One last thing and we are done. Edit menu again, down to the toolbar. In the toolbar here, that's everything that's over here on this side shows up in here. These are all the tools. If you are missing something over in here, like when I say, oh, we need to get to the mixer brush, it might be missing. You come to this part and you can just hit restore defaults and it will go back to Adobe's regular thing. However, if you find that you use only 2 or 3 tools over and over and over again, you can get rid of tools. So let's say, okay, I am never going to use the perspective crop tool. You can actually drag this guy to get rid of it right here and it will no longer show up in my toolbar over here. Now again, if I think, well, I really shouldn't have done that, whatever, I can simply hit restore defaults and it will put it right back in its place. You can move these around if you want to, if you prefer the order for some reason, all of that kind of stuff, you can do that. So I'm just gonna hit done here. And then the one last thing, edit menu again, down to keyboard shortcuts. In the keyboard shortcuts here, this is where you can actually also check that, use legacy undo shortcuts. So we've already set that up in one place. I'm going to set it up here in another. Again, this is how does Command Z operate? Does it just alternate between 2 states or does it go all the way back in history? So at any rate, and okay to that, and that is it. So I have got 334, we'll call it 335. Let's make it a hard 10, be back at 345, and we'll actually start working on something. So now, 2 things to talk about really quickly. The first is, now that you've done all of this work to do it, you should save a copy of those preferences, because right now, if you end up going into Photoshop and weird things start to happen, like you pick the brush tool but it acts like the lasso tool, or you pick the lasso tool and it does something weird, something else, whatever. Usually you're troubleshooting, the first thing to do is to quit Photoshop and restart it. If that fixes the problem, great. If that doesn't fix the problem, you do a wholesale restart on your computer. Just start it from scratch, start Photoshop up again. But a lot of times that will not fix the problem. So in that case, you need to reset your preferences. The problem is that it just took us an hour to actually build the preferences. So if we save a version of your preferences right now, then all you need to do is plug them back into Photoshop to get a fresh, exactly the way they are set up to go right now. So you don't have to go through all of this again. Even better, if you go to somebody else's machine and you want to use your preferences on their machine, you simply load this file that you save into that machine and it will have all of your preferences exactly like you set them up. If you migrate to a brand new computer, you do not have to do all the setup again. You just continue to use this one file. It's not just a file, it's a folder, but you just continue to replace the folder and you are good to go. So I need everybody to do this to see first how this works. So if you're in Photoshop right now, I want you to quit Photoshop. And then here's the trick. It's 2 different keyboard shortcuts, because what we're going to do is we are going to reset our preferences right now. I don't want you to actually do that because it will undo all the work that we just did. But I want to show you how to get there to that point if you need to do that. So for the Windows people, you're going to do this keyboard shortcut. Again, something to write down, although you can easily look it up. But the keyboard shortcut for Windows, you need Photoshop needs to be quit. It cannot be running. So for the Windows people, you want to hold down the Alt, Control, and Shift key. So just remember that. Hold it down right now. So find your Alt, Control, and Shift. For the Macintosh people, you want to use Option, Command, Shift. And while you are holding those keys down, so I'm going to hold all of those down, you want to launch Photoshop, still keeping those keyboards down. And you will get this dialog that opens up and it says, do you want to delete the Photoshop settings file? Do not say yes. You will throw away all the work we just did. But if your Photoshop is acting really wonky, this is what you ultimately have to do. This is the final fix. When you do this, it's going to give you a shipping version of Photoshop. So everything that we just set is going to need to be redone. It will go back to that general purpose 2 shitty setup in your color settings. If you have custom workspaces, which we're going to build next, you'll lose all of that. So at any rate, in this case, say no. That's just how you get there if you have to do this. And then in terms of saving your preferences so that you have something to replace a clean version of Photoshop with, there's 2 different pathways to get there. So if you go to our Canvas site and you go into Resources number 1, there is a Photoshop preference location file right here. You need to click on this to open it up. And it will say, okay, this is where all the preferences are for Photoshop files. And this, to me, is a nightmare. They put shit everywhere. I mean, they scatter. Photoshop is like fucking all over your computer. So to find out what we're really trying to get to is you need to scroll down and find it. So I'm going to start with the Mac OS people first. So you can see right under here, under name and description, the general setting preferences. This is all the things that we just changed. You need to, the file name is going to have a specific version in it. You will see. So I'm in 2026 right now, but I've also got beta on mine. I've also got 2025 on mine and 2024. So I probably have setting files for all of those. You just want to make sure that the one that you save is the version that you're using right now. And this is where it is. So you need to go to your user folder. Inside your user folder is your library, not the general library, but yours. There's a preference folder in there, Adobe Photoshop, and again, it will have the version settings, the year number setting in there, and then the word settings. So that's where, so I'm going to do this with the Mac, with OS people first, and then I'm going to do it with the Windows people as well. So hold that. If you are a Windows person and you want to go looking for it, scroll down. It's easier for Windows people to get to this than it is for the Mac people to get to theirs. So scroll down and you will find eventually Windows preference locations. And in the Windows one, the general settings, that's what we just built. Again, it's going to have a version name, a version name in it. So if you've got Photoshop 2025, it'll be that. If it's got 2026, it'll have that. If you've got 2024, it'll have that. If you have beta, it'll have that. So anyway, that's where you want to find, which of those is. And this is the path to get to yours. So again, it is also in your user folder, in the app data folder, in the roaming folder. Inside of that is an Adobe folder. Inside of that is an Adobe Photoshop version. Inside of that is the folder that you're looking for, the Adobe Photoshop. And again, it'll be 2024, 2025, 2026, beta, whatever it is, settings. This entire folder, you don't want to just go after a file. You need to copy the entire folder to your desktop or to an external hard drive or to something that you've got with you, so that if this happens to you, then you simply go and find this file, that you're, the entire folder that you've saved, you find it, and you plug it right back into this very same location. And you will then not have to do all of that work that we just did. So for the Macintosh, so the Windows people, go looking for this. For the Macintosh people, it's tricky to find this because Apple hides the user library. So to find the user library, you need to follow these steps. So do this with me. You need to come into the Finder. I'm going to hide everybody else so it doesn't look too confusing in here. So to do this, if you come up to your Go menu and click on it, you will not see anywhere in here the word that says library in here. Depending on the Mac you have, you hold down either the Control key, in my case it's not the Control key, the Option key, it is the Option key. So you'll see that library is showing up right here. This is your user library. The reason Apple is hiding this from you is that there's stuff in here that if you throw away or muck with too much, you can really cause a lot of damage. But this is where all the good stuff is held and protected, and this is where we need to go to. So holding down your Option key, you'll see library. Go ahead and let go, and it will open up a window, and at the very top, it should say library. Does everybody have that who's on a Mac? Okay. You don't want to have to do this every single time you do that. So if you come up over the word at the very top of your screen and hover over library at the top, you'll see, just like I'm doing it, you'll see a little icon of the folder shows up. You need to click that and drag it and bring it over to your favorites and let go. You will now have a permanent version and a link to your library. So instead of having to do that Option Go trick, you will always have this in your Finder windows. You're going to click on Library. You're going to scroll all the way down to Preferences. Not Preference pane, Preferences. Inside of Preferences, you will see I have got an Adobe Photoshop beta settings. I've got Adobe Photoshop 2025 settings, and I've got Adobe Photoshop 2026 settings. This is the folder that I want. This is the one that I just built. Click on this, and if you drag it down to your desktop, don't let go, because if you let go, it's going to remove it from this preference folder. We don't want to move it. We want to make a copy of it. So before you let go, hold down the Option key, and you'll see your cursor turns in to a little green plus. And now when you let go, it's actually going to say, I've already got one down there. It's going to put it down there for you, but it's going to leave the original one in place, which is what you want. So now forevermore, if things screw up for me, all I need to do is take this folder right here and bring it right back into this same space, and I will be ready to go. Say what? I copied it onto my desktop, but you can put it anywhere. You can put it on an external hard drive. You can put it anywhere. Say what? Oh, hold down the Option key, and then you'll see it turns into be, there's a little green, your cursor will turn into a little green circle with a plus. That means you're copying it as opposed to moving it. Okay. Were the Windows people able to find where theirs were? Anyone? Bueller? Anyone? Just a safe place to keep it. What a lot of people will do, just so that you know, because it's a way to differentiate it, a lot of people will zip that file. So it compresses it, but that way you know it's different. And then you know, oh, anytime I need a fresh one of this, I just double click on this, I just decompress it, and that's the folder. It just makes sure it's clean. Okay. Okie dokie. We're doing reasonably good here, he said. Okay, back into Photoshop. So this is the workspace that I use, and it's the workspace that I'm going to suggest that you use, again, for retouching. Most of the people who have gone through this class, like myself, they end up using this. They never go back. They never change this. But I'm sure your screen does not look like this. So what I'm going to do is show you how to make a custom workspace. You can always go back to the one that you've got. Most of you, is anybody here working with a custom workspace? Most of you are using the essential ones or the photo ones. There's a number of them. To show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to go back to the essential one on mine. So I'm going to make mine look like yours. So to do that, if you come up to, so you're in Photoshop, up to the window menu, come down to workspace, and there's a series of workspaces in here. There is the essentials workspace. There's one for motion, one for painting, one for photography, one for graphic and web. All of these are canned workspaces. These are custom ones that I actually have up here, but these are canned workspaces. Again, most of you are working with this. Some of you may be working in the photo one, but most of you are probably working in the essentials default one. So I'm going to click on essentials default, which is going to change my screen. However, whenever you do a change of workspace, it's 2 steps. Changing the workspace is not enough. That's the first of 2 steps. The second step is to go right back to that exact same space, the workspace, and you'll notice that reset workspace now has been renamed to reset essentials. You need to click on that. And you'll see my whole thing just changed. This is the default now that Photoshop actually ships with. So this is where we're going to start. We're not going to keep this. We're going to modify this workspace right here. So does everybody have this space that looks like this? Anybody not? All right. Remember, you all swore to me you'd shout out and say, yeah, okay. All right. So there's a lot that we're going to sort of change about this. The one important thing that we've got on here that I need to check with everyone is go up to your window menu and then look at the very bottom and make sure that you have application frame checked. If you uncheck application frame, what ends up happening is that you lose the background. So I'm now looking through to my screen recording software, but also all of these palettes are free floating now. And that is not how we want it to actually work. So I'm going to undo that by going back up to window again, and I'm going to turn on my application frame again. And what the application frame does is it anchors all of your palettes. So if you come up to the very top near the word that says Adobe Photoshop 2026 or 2025 or beta, whatever you have, if you click on this and move it around, you'll see that everything moves around with it. They are all anchored. If you actually drag it down like this and then double click on this area that's right next to the 2026, if you double click really fast, it resets itself to be as big on your screen as it can be without losing any of the palettes. If I had an external monitor attached to this and pulled this over and did that double click, it would expand to my external monitor. It will expand to whatever space it's actually on. So it's just a great trick to know. It's something that we use all the time. Okay, so we're going to start on the left side of this, on the right side of this. There's a couple of icons that are sitting right here. If you click on the one at the very top, it says history, and then there's comments in here as well. I want you to grab the history tab, and I want you to just simply tear it off. If you just click on it and drag and pull it out into the middle of your workspace and let go, it will actually come out here and be all on its own. Comments is still attached to this bar over here. I want to get rid of comments. So click on the comments tab, tear it off, let go, and when you do that, you'll now have a small X in the top left-hand corner of comments. Click on that little X and it will get rid of it. Now, if you get rid of something by mistake and you say, oh shit, I wanted comments back again, all of these palettes are listed under the window menu. So you would simply come back to the window menu and you would come down to comments right here, and it brings it right back where it was when you got rid of it. But for us, we're not going to use this. There's a lot of stuff on here that you use maybe once in a lifetime, twice a day, whatever. We get rid of the majority of that. So then on the left side over here, still working on this part over here, we do not use color at all. Grab the color tab, drag it out onto your screen, and click on the X to get rid of it. We do not use patterns. Grab the pattern tab, pull it out into the middle, and get rid of it. Again, we can use patterns for certain things, but nobody does, unless you're, a graphic designer doing wallpaper, patterns are probably not something that you're going to use on a daily basis. Gradients, we do not use. Click on it and drag it out and get rid of it. Now the trick to this is that these are all still anchored. I am going to get rid of swatches, but the problem is I don't want to do that first, because what I want is properties to be anchored to the top. So we are going to grab the Properties tab, which is right underneath this, click on it, drag it up to the top, and you need to see it see when I get up to the very top right next to the swatches, I get a blue line that goes around the entire thing. That tells me it is now going to anchor as a tab in this top space. So let go of that. Now Properties is anchored to the top, which is correct. Then I can grab my Swatches tab and pull it out and get rid of it. If I had done it in the other direction, whatever, if I'd gotten rid of swatches first, I would not be able to get Properties up where it is right now, anchored correctly. So it's a pain in the ass, it's a workaround, but what can I tell you? Libraries, we are going to keep. We're going to click on the libraries and we're going to pull it up next to Properties. Again, make sure that you get the blue line that goes around the entire thing and let go. But then when we save our workspace, whatever tab was active is what will get saved in your workspace. We don't use libraries anywhere near as much as we use Properties. So click on the Properties tab to make sure that you can still see that part. So adjustments. How many of you actually use adjustments? So in the Adjustments tab right here, you can click on this. We get all sorts of adjustment parts in here, single adjustments, whatever. Nobody uses this stuff, so we are not going to use this guy right here. However, I'm concerned that if I pull this out, I don't know if my Layers tab is actually going to stay connected. So we're going to find out. Grab Adjustments and pull this out and get rid of it. And we are in good shape over here. So finally over here in the rest of this, we are not keeping channels connected with this. We want to be able to work with channels. So I'm going to grab the Channels tab and I'm going to drag and pull it out into the middle and just let go. So on my right side over here, I've got Properties at the top, Libraries behind it, Layers and Paths behind it. And then I've got all my tools on the other side. Has everybody sort of got something like this? Okay. My next move are things we need to add that are actually not on here. So I'm going to start off, go up to your window menu and come down to Info, and it'll bring out your info palette. It will actually attach it to this right-hand side. That's not where I want it. I'm going to actually grab this tab and pull it out. And then I'm going to bring this over. I want it to be at the top, right underneath this, right connected to my toolbar on this side over here. It's a little bit tricky when you do it. So grab the, again, the info tab, pull it over, and then you'll see when you get the solid blue line that runs all the way down, that tells you that it's going to then anchor to the tool tab, which is exactly what I want. So this is now anchored in place. I want to put my history underneath my info palette. The problem is that if you think about it, you would normally, typically you would grab the history thing and you would try to put it down underneath here. That's not where you do it. If you take a look at your info palette, there is a series of really thin little black lines. The one on the bottom is really the bottom of this palette. So you grab your history and you bring it right underneath that bottom line. And again, you will see a really bright blue line that crosses this thing. Let go, and now your history is sitting underneath that. Now I need channels to be under history. There is none of those black lines anymore. So now you do what we thought we might want to do when we moved history. Grab your Channels tab and drag it and put it underneath the History tab. When you see the solid blue line, you know you're there. Let go, and it'll actually put it underneath it. Now, I like a little more even space. I don't need as much history as I need channel information. So if you hover your cursor right at the top of the channels palette right next to the tab where it actually touches the history, you'll see you get a double-headed arrow. You can simply click and bring that space up so that they're a little bit more even. And one last thing we need to do is add actions. So come over to your window menu and come down, and you're going to add actions. It will actually put it out in the middle of your screen. It also has comments attached to it. I don't want comments, so I'm going to grab my comments tab, tear it off, and click on the X. And then I'm going to grab actions, and I'm going to add it to my history palette. So again, bring it over to the history so the tabs are really close to each other. You need to see the full blue square around it, and then you'll know it's docking in. History is now the back one. I want it to be the front one. I use history more than actions, and this is the workspace that I actually use. So if you want to save this, and you should save this whether you end up using it or not, no one wants to rebuild this, come up to the window menu, down to workspace, down to new workspace, and it's going to open up, and you want to name it something meaningful like retouching. I have 100,000 of these, so I don't need to name mine anymore, but nonetheless, that's all you need to name yours. You don't need to give it a number, and then simply hit save. And when you do that, you should now have something that looks just like this. If you then go back to your Windows palette, down to Workspace, and go back to Essentials, and then do a reset, so again, Workspace, reset Essentials, it'll look like Adobe Photoshop when it ships. But if you want to use your retouching workspace, you go up to Window, down to Workspace, down to retouching, my current one is number 30, and then again, remember, two-step process. Back up to the window, workspace, and do a reset on that. And you're ready to rock. Questions about this? Okay, you will find that as we get into this class, all of these things are really important to be able to see. So a lot of you actually used to use the adjustments pad. I just want to go over this part really quickly. If you take a look at your layers palette down here, here, let's get an image up here first. So hang on one second, let me check to make sure I'm where I think I should be. Yeah. Okay, we're actually going to open a file. So I need you to go to your session number 1. So in the folders that the assignments that you copied. And inside your session number 1, there should be a thing that's called red_car.psd. Now, if you double click on this, depending on how many versions of Photoshop you have on your computer, it might all open up in a different version. If you want to know exactly the version that it's opened in, if you've got your icons at the bottom that have, like this is my beta version, this is my regular version, you simply drag this file on top of the dock onto the that version of it, and it will open actually in that. And it looks like a red car. If you've got the contextual toolbar that's sitting right down here, this is where a lot of the AI stuff happens. We're not going to work with this right now. So if you click on the little 3 dots that are to the right of it, you can click and say, for the time being, we are going to hide the bar. If you want to get the bar back because you didn't want to do that, go up to your window menu, and it's right down at the bottom, contextual taskbar. Click on it, and it brings it right back. But in our case, it's just going to get in the way. We don't need it. Okay, we're going to see how good all of you 3, 3.5s, 4. There were no 4s in here, but my phone. I'm going to put 2 minutes on a clock, on a timer. I need you to turn the car green. Go. Yeah.
So, how do I get rid of like the white background? When I drag the car over, it's like literally in the middle of it.
Oh, you don't drag the card over. So you need to hit Command C to undo that, or just go back up to the. Yeah, you need to get rid of that guy. So double click on this whole menu bar at the top. Yeah, just double click really
Just-
fast. There you go. So now it's big. Click on your window right now, and let me drop down. So it's this untitled PSD one that you got right here. So we can't see the little parts to get rid of it, though, those traffic lights things. So let go of that. Hit the F key. Again. One more time. And it should be back. You've got this as tab behavior. That's why I get rid of it. Click on that because you're going to get rid of the tab.
The X.
And then again, you've got this annoying thing, but you didn't have that
Yeah.
one, so we're going to change all of your preferences. So this will not keep happening to you. Now go back to that file really quickly.
This one?
No, the file of the car.
Oh. It was here.
Yeah, and you probably do a control click or a right click on the car. And open with. And then on Photoshop 2026. And you'll be good to go. And again, double click on the.
Sorry,
Sorry,
it's touch
touchscreen. Yeah, double click on that. Okay, time's up. How'd we do? I'm just gonna take a quick peek. Still a very rude car. You did hear that I said make it green, right? Okay, I'm just curious. Hue saturation, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no one's ever done that. But if I could give you extra credit, I get extra credit for there because she made the whole thing green. The entire image. I love that. That's a first. Hue saturation. Yeah, it looks like most of you who did it did hue saturation. Did anybody do it another way?
Selective color.
Oh, so again, go to where the image actually is. On your hard drive, or where did you download all of the images? Oh, I've got to give you the file system before you leave. So hue saturation, yeah. And you can see there's issues with doing the hue saturation part. So I need somebody to whip out a timer for me. I'm going to show you how I would do it. And I just want to see how long it'll take. Okay, so has anybody got a timer going? Would just tell me when to start. Start. Stop. 20 seconds? Yeah, if I had a mouse and wasn't have sticky fingers, whatever, maybe 15. Color theory. Does anybody have any idea what I just did? Well, it looks way better than the fucking hue saturation stuff that you guys were doing, right? And I did it in 15 seconds. You got it in 2 minutes. Come on. So I'm going to show you what I did just to give you some idea of what's going on here. Now this is obviously not complete. I still would have to refine this somewhat. As you can see, I not only, and what I did was I inverted the color of the car, but I also inverted the color of the brick in the background. Those are all simple fixes. But the point being is that I'm able to do things because I understand the color engines that are actually underneath all of this. And you have got to do that. If you understand what really makes up color and how we control color, it will change everything about your Photoshop skills. So this is what I did. I'm going to go back in history, so everybody start with me. If you want to go back to the very original state when it opened up, before you put your hue saturation or you, I don't know, did whatever you did, simply go to your history palette and click on the very top. You can see there's a red car. It's like red_car. While we're here, we actually want to set up a couple of more options that are sitting in here. So if you got your history tab selected, there are 3 little lines. They call it a hamburger. Some people call it a hamburger. That's right to the right of that. If you click on this, you can actually come down and set your history options. You want to do this. And when this opens up, it'll have by default automatically create first snapshot. You also want to click on automatically create new snapshot when saving. And then finally, you would like to quit, because this hasn't worked in years, but we're ever hopeful. You want to click on show new snapshot dialog by default and say OK. The other 2 things that you actually want to do is you want to make all of your previews bigger. You can't make your history bigger, but you can make your channels bigger, which you should. You can pick up a lot of information in the size of those thumbnails. So come to the channels palette, click on it, then click on the little 3 lines that are to the right of that. Come down to panel options and click on the radio button next to the largest of the thumbnails and say OK. Now we've really got something we can work with. You're going to do the exact same thing for the layers palette. Over to the layers palette, click on the little hamburger, come down to panel options, click on the biggest thumbnail, OK, and then finally you're going to do the same thing for paths. Up, click on the top, down to panel options, and the largest of the thumbnails. This will be important for you later on. And then back to layers. So what I did was, so the image opens up. If you take a look up at the very top, it says redcar.psd. So it tells me it's a Photoshop file. And then it also has in parentheses RGB and the /8. What this means is that this is an RGB image in 8-bit. There's another thing that you need to change as well. And these are all sticky things, so you won't have to change this again. If you come over to the bottom left-hand corner of the image that's open, there's a thing right now, it's showing me the size of this image. If you click on this, you will actually get a flyout. You want to change this to document profile. And the reason you want to do this is that this is a quick check for you to make sure that, yes, indeed, I am still working in Adobe RGB 8-bit. So that if all of a sudden this thing flashed off sRGB, you would think, oh wait, how did that happen? Adobe RGB is my default. This is a warning for you that something is off. So at any rate, this is what I did. If you come up to the image menu down to mode, you will see that this is an RGB color. RGB is only one color model that Photoshop works with. It's actually not the model that's underneath it all that does all the heavy lifting. So I'm going to change this from RGB color to LAB color. We're going to look at what LAB color is in just a second, so it's a little bit of a preview. Click on LAB, and now you'll see that the car thing says, again, redcar.psd, and then you get into the parentheses, and it says LAB/8. This is now in the LAB color workspace. This is not called lab. If you call it lab, people who are in the color world will know you don't know what you're talking about. It's no more lab than RGB is good. And you sound just as stupid to the people in the know. So again, just trying to make your, professional, blah, 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 blah. So what has now happened? Look at your channels. You don't have RGB anymore. You've actually got a lightness channel. If you click on that lightness channel, you will see it is the luminosity of your image. It represents all of the tonal range, grayscale, luminosity. It's got no color in it. This is the reason that we do this. We have just divorced color from tone. You cannot do that in RGB. We'll look at that in just a second. If you come down to the A channel, the A channel represents the green magenta axis. So this is all the greens and magentas that are in this image. And then if you go down to the B channel represents the blue yellow. Again, we're going to look at color theory right after I do this. So what these say as what we're representing here, the reason this trick works so well is I am just going to manipulate the green magenta axis. I'm simply going to invert it. But because I'm in LAB, it doesn't have any impact at all on the luminosity. So the car stays, all the luminosity of the car remains. So to do this, come over to the layers palette, and at the very bottom, you will see there's a series of icons down here at the bottom. This is what we use as opposed to the layers menu, or a lot of you use an adjustment palette that sits in the middle. You don't need to use any of that stuff. It's all right down here. So if we look down at the very bottom, if you look at the, I'm going to go from right to left. On the very right is a garbage can. That's how you throw layers away. Right next to it is just, it's a square with a plus in the middle. It's how you add a layer, and it just adds, I clicked on it, it adds a blank layer. You can hit the delete key, that'll get rid of that layer, or you can add it again. You can add it again, and then you can simply drag it down to the garbage can, either one. The layer, the icon next to that looks like a folder. This is how you can actually create a group for layers. So a lot of the work that we do, we will be putting it into groups just to give us some order, especially if you start to get into images that get more than 15 or 20 layers in it. You definitely want structure to it, because otherwise you'll never be able to find what you need to change. The one that's next to that, that's the circle that's half black and half white, if you click on that and hold it, you will actually see, you get this flyout menu that has all of the things that you could do for adjustment layers that occupy that whole center palette right here. We don't want to waste space. There's no reason to have that adjustment palette in there when you've got all of them right here. We're going to come back to that one in just a second. The next one over is layer mask. It's how you add a layer mask. The next one over is how you add a style, a layer style. And then finally, the last one over there is how you can lock layers together. We will get to all of that part later. But for the time being, I'm going to click on the icon that's the circle that's half black and half white. Click on this and come up, and we're going to add a curve to this. When you do add a curve in your properties panel, which is exactly where you want to see this, you will notice in your little drop down at the top, you don't have RGB anymore. You've actually got lightness. If you click on this, you'll see you also have your A channel, which again is green magenta axis, and your B channel, which again is blue yellow axis. I'm going to just pick the A, which is my magenta green, and I'm going to invert it just by flipping the curve. I'm going to grab the black point at the bottom and drag it all the way up. I'm going to grab the white point and drag it all the way down. And what I've just told Photoshop is that everything that was red, I now want green. Done. A quick layer mask on this, everybody else is cleaned out, and you're off to the races. When we get into recoloring fabrics, hairs, any of that kind of stuff, whatever, we always work in LAB. LAB is truly the color that sits underneath Photoshop. It's the engine that does all color. Questions about this? Okay. So guys, I'm going to get through this as quickly as I can without shortchanging anything on this, but we've got to talk about color, and so here we go in the beginning. So we start with additive primaries. So in additive primary system, red, green, and blue are the primaries. It's what we work with typically in Photoshop. It's RGB, red, green, and blue. The secondaries of this would be magenta, yellow, and cyan. So you can see this is light. This is not pigment. This is light. So if I had, imagine I've got three projectors, one that's only shining a green spot, one that's shining a blue spot, and one that's shining a red spot. Where there is no other color hitting it, it is its color. So this is the red, this is the green, this is the blue. However, where they overlap, you get the secondary colors. So where blue and red overlap, you get magenta. Where red and green overlap, you get yellow. And where green and blue overlap, you get cyan. Cyan are the secondary colors. Where all three overlap, you get a neutral color. This is now a gray. Now you need to remember, white is a gray, no, gray is a gray, black is a gray, but wherever these all overlap, if they overlap in equal amounts, you will have a neutral gray, and if it's at the maximum intensity, it will be white. Make sense? It is an emissive technology. So what happens is, you can't see this. I don't want to fuck this up. See this? It's a screen. You don't see anything on it. There's nothing happening. It starts black. Then we add light to this. That's why these are called additive primaries. We start to add light to this. And the more we add, if it's colored, then we can actually mix these colors to get any color we want. If we get equal amounts of it to go at the maximum intensity, we will be looking at white on this monitor. Make sense? Okay. So you start with black. There is no light. You add different amounts of RGB to achieve any color that you want. Equal amounts of RGB equal gray. This is critical to us because this is how you white balance images. When you use the white balance control to do that in Camera Raw and you look for something in your image that should be neutral, what it does is when you click on it, it makes whatever you clicked on have equal amounts of RGB. That makes it neutral, and it is white balanced. But this is key. White is equal to, again, equal amounts of RGB at the maximum intensity. How black is black? Here. No, you can't see that. You're not using the screen, are you? Okay. Can everybody see this screen? If you can't, move around here. So you need to see the screen right here. This is critical. Can't see it from there. Everybody, can they see that? Can you see that screen? Is that as black as it can get?
No.
How much blacker can it get?
Well, you gotta eliminate the light.
You've been through this rodeo before, right?
Yeah.
You would say that most people say, oh yeah, that's as black as it can be. And I would say, watch the screen right now. Just get blacker considerably. So what does that tell us? What controls the black point of your images?
The light.
Your environment. How many of you retouch in a room that's got sunlight coming in it? Oh, come on. You guys got to be involved in this. I need a little, call and response. These lights take forever to come back on. Again, my question, where do you retouch? Yeah, I retouch my bedroom. I go into the kitchen. I go into the room that's out there. I do all of that kind of shit, right? All of those rooms are way too light because they are impacting your screen. They take what should be a rich black on your screen and lighten it. So when you go in and you're retouching it, you put a curve on there to make the fucker darker because you think it's too light. It's not the screen, it's not your image, it is the room is doing this to you. That's why that room, after all of these years, they finally have fucking listened to me and have closed all the windows and killed all the overlights atop and put up screens to eliminate any of the light that's coming in from the prep space. That is a proper retouching space. What is a real proper retouching space for you? You should have the room so dark, you need to be able to navigate. You need to be able to see chairs and tables and that kind of stuff, but not much above that. Actually, I've measured that room. That room is almost ideal, especially at night. That's how you want your retouching space to be. And you can't let it change. I've seen students start working in the general lab there in the middle of the morning, sunlight screaming in, and they keep retouching through the whole day, and then at night it's jet black, and it's just and their black has completely shifted, and they haven't done anything. Their file's the same. They haven't done a thing. It's the room. The environment sets your black point. And if you don't get that under control, you're fucked. I keep going back to the orange shirt because it's just, I love the orange part, whatever. But does anybody have a problem retouching in that shirt? Hello, it reflects on your screen. So you are putting an orange cast on your screen. That then you go in and you look at your file and you go, God, my file's too orange. I got to actually combat that. So you start pumping in a bunch of cyan to actually kill the orange, It was never the problem. It's what you're fucking wearing. Oh, how about yellow walls in the space that you retouch that are now throwing a yellow cast on your screen? If you're serious about your retouching, you have got to lock all of these variables down. You care about the light in the room. You care about it shifting for sure. You care about any light source that you've got that's throwing color cast. You care about the clothes that you're wearing because they all throw color cast on your screen. You're trying to do color work and your color's got 15 variables that are constantly changing. How can you even begin to imagine being able to do that? That's the point of this class for me. I don't necessarily care if you go out and become a retoucher. I care if your stuff is, what I care about is that you're able to do the shit that you want to do and do it fast. And don't throw so many problems in your way and not understand why is this happening? Why does what I see on screen nothing close to what I'm actually got in print? This is it. Subtracted primaries. These are now cyan, magenta, and yellow. This red, green, and blue are the secondaries. So the thing that you need to know about this is that this is a subtractive method now, not an additive one. And what a subtractive method does is it's printing. It starts with white. And you add color on here to subtract light to get any other color. So I ask people this all the time. Why is this hard drive red? Reddish. Why do you see it? Yes.
Because only the red wavelengths are reflecting off it.
Yes, but there's another part to that. Do you know the other part? All the other colors are being absorbed by it. Right? So, white light in general has all the colors of the spectrum in it, every single color that there is. So what happens with whatever they use to dye this thing with, all of the colors are hitting it. If it was white, they'd be all reflecting it back exactly the same thing. Again, all colors, all RGB, all our colors, whatever, in equal amounts, whatever, are going to equal neutral grades. So anyway, but what happens to this? All the colors hit this. Every color except for this red is absorbed by this, whatever this thing is. The color that they've done this with, except for the red. And the red is reflected, and so you see it as red. And that's true of all color. So when we talk about this situation right here, again, these are not lights. These are now inks. These are pigments. You've got a cyan pigment, a yellow pigment, and a blue pigment. If you mix cyan and magenta together, you get blue. If you mix magenta and yellow together, you get red. And if you mix yellow and cyan together, you get green. What's happening is that these colors are subtracting light. In theory, in a perfect world, which we don't have, and I'm not getting political, I'm just saying color-wise, in theory, all three of these together at their maximum intensity would be black. But there's a problem. So this is theoretical. But again, black would be the ultimate subtraction. How do I turn this to black? I subtract all the light from reflecting off of it. Again, subtractive as opposed to additive. Is this making sense to everyone? The problem with this is you cannot get pure enough inks. There's no such thing as pure cyan is really the biggest problem of them all. But there is there's no pigment they've found in the world that will give you a truly pure red, cyan, magenta, or yellow. So it works by absorbing light on paper, so what you get back is the color. It starts with white. If you subtract any amounts of these, using these inks to subtract light that's coming back at you, you can create the entire range of RGB color. Pure CMY pigments do not exist. Equal amounts of CMYK do not equal gray. That's why we don't work in CMYK in this in Photoshop. Black is not equal to CMYK at the maximum intensity. This is why they have to have K. K actually stands for black ink. The reason they don't use a B for black ink is because people confuse it with B, which stands for blue. So K represents black ink. So what happens is when we're in really light colors, very, very light things, whatever, the CMYK model, the CMY model works actually pretty well. But once you get to about mid-tones, you start to get into real trouble in terms of trying to make it, instead of this being black, what ends up happening because of the ink impurities, it becomes dark, shitty brown. You never get a real sense of black. So what they start to do is they start to remove this CMYK coloring and they start adding black inks. And you guys know that if you ever worked with an inkjet printer, that's exactly what's in there. There's a series of CMY inks, and then there's a whole series of blacks, and then they use usually light magentas and lights to extend the dynamic range of color. But anyway, that's what's going on there. So how white is white? Can this piece of paper get any whiter? How? Say what? Add light. It's not going to get any whiter. It might reflect more light, but it won't be any whiter. The only way you can actually change these things, again, this would be, most inkjet papers that you guys have in use in them have optical brighteners in them, and they cheat. They actually take ultraviolet color that you cannot normally see, and they bend it and they bring it into the visible spectrum, so it looks like your page is actually glowing. It looks to be whiter. So how many of you guys have ever used, quick question here, like blue clothes washing, liquid like Whisk? Anybody ever use that? Or the white shit that's got the little blue crystals in it? You know the stuff I'm talking about though, right? That stuff is a dye. And what it does is it dyes all of your clothes, doesn't matter what your clothes you have are. It's a dye that actually takes UV light that you can't see, and it bends it so it comes into the visible spectrum. How many guys of you have ever seen a fluorescent anything? So a fluorescent poster, fluorescent, shirt, fluorescent, all of that, it does the same trick. It's taking UV light, which you can't see, and bringing it into the spectrum that you can. Unfortunately, that's a perversion of color, because now all of a sudden you have far more color in a part of the spectrum than you should. So at any rate, but how many of you have ever washed softbox or an umbrella? Any of your gear, any of your photo gear. You ever throw it in the wash? If you throw it in the wash with that blue shit, it will dye it. And it will dye it with a UV dye that actually then fucks up the color that's actually going through it, and you will hate your life. Anyway, just a thought, just throwing it out there. All right, I digress. And we don't have much time. So I need everybody in Photoshop to open up their, click on your foreground or background color, either one, doesn't matter. And this will open up what they call the color picker. So this one's critical for you guys to, sorry, just get rid of this for a second. Okay, with the color picker open, there are a set of radio buttons. You can see right next to it, there's RGB ones, there's HSB ones, there are LED ones, and then there's CMYK that does not have any radio buttons next to them. So I want you to click on the red radio button. You just click on the foreground color. You can click on either the foreground or the back. Just double click on that guy. Yeah, I'm going to cancel again. So I'm going to close up the car. Yeah, just click on this guy. It opens up the color picker. I want to zero mine out. So if you click on the red, on the little slot that's right next to the R and type in a 0, hit the tab key, type in a 0 for the green, tab key, 0 for the blue, you'll have a black color in here. And then I want you to click on the red radio button right here. And you'll see when you click on the red radio button that the column next to it becomes whatever you click on. So whatever we've clicked on, that's what this column becomes. And because I clicked on the red, you can now see it's actually, the column is going from black up to red. So if you look at the number that's in here, you can see 0. This is a black red. In Photoshop, there are three different, well, in RGB anyway, there are three different blacks. They all look alike, but they're three different blacks. There's a red black, there's a green black, and a blue black, but mathematically it matters to Photoshop. If you take the two little arrows that are at the bottom of that column and click on them and start to drag up, you will see that the numbers in that R box are changing, and if you go all the way up to the very tippy top, you'll see it tops out at 255, and you'll also notice that the new color in here is red. This is the brightest, purest, most saturated red that we have. So the thing that's important for you to realize is the scale that we work in 8-bit color is 250 tones if we're in grayscale. If we're in color, we have 256. We have 256 tones in grayscale. We have 256 reds. We have 256 greens, and we have 256 blues. And different amounts of those achieve all of the colors that we can see. So if you drag this back down again and click on the green, you'll see it's the same thing. We've got 256 tones because 0 is a tone. So 0 plus 255 is 256 colors. So let me just make sure I'm not losing this. Yeah, one last thing to do.
I have a question.
Shoot.
My color picker is showing up in RGB stuff.
It's showing what?
The RGB settings. It's not showing the how you have it.
Okay. I'm going to leave my R cranked all the way up to the very top. So crank your R all the way to the very top, and then click on green, and then crank it all the way to the very top as well. And now you see we get yellow. When we combine the max of both RGB, if we got the same amount of red and the same amount of green, we are going to have a shade of yellow. If you then click on the blue column and drag it all the way up, we go to white because we have equal amounts of RGB that that are at their maximum intensity, and we have white. If you then come and we're going to type in values. The midpoint of gray in this scale is 128. So click on your red value and type in 128, tab key 128, tab key 128. And now look, you've got, again, equal amounts of RGB. This is so critical. Equal and neutral gray. This is a middle gray. Is this making sense, everybody, what's going on? You can also do this using the HSB model part right here. If you click on the B part radio button, this is brightness. So watch what happens now. I'm going to make this take it all the way to the top or all the way down. Look at your RGB values as we do this. They all remain exactly the same because neutral grays are always equal amounts of RGB. Okay, you can close that up. We're going to get to a good stopping point here in just a second, so stay with me. We got just a little bit more to go, and we will pick it up next week. So the part about this is, again, we've opened the color picker, we set that, we've done all that, okay, that part's done, blah, blah, blah. So try stimulus color spaces. So don't let this name freak you out. All this is that all of the colors of the spectrum can be described in terms of 3 values or stimuli. RGB are 3 of them, HSB are 3 of them, LAB is 3 of them, XYZ is 3 of them. I mean, there are all sorts of color models. They all take 3 values to describe color. RGB is tri-stimulus color space. Human eyes are RGB. All of this whole model that we're looking at was based on how our eyes work. We have rods inside of our eyes, a specific type of cell that responds to color. Some of them respond to red, some of them to green, some of them to blue. That's where, way back in the day, all the scientists who put all this shit together, they did this trying to model human eyes, how human eyes actually work. However, they do not need to be primaries. You can have color systems that are not primaries. HSB is not primaries. It's hue, saturation, brightness. We will look at this next week. LAB is not. Adobe RGB, sRGB, none of these are your conventional, red, green, and blue, or cyan, magenta, and yellow. However, these are spaces. Because these are three-dimensional, you can create spaces out of them. And this will be a great place to end it. Give me one more slide. So this is an RGB three-dimensional color space. So this is a cube, and you can see at this point right down here in this corner, it's 0, 0, 0. So these are all the RGB. This is the green axis, red axis, blue axis. They're all zeroed out right here. This is black. If you go along the red line right here all the way to the end, this is pure red. This is exactly what we just did in Photoshop in that slider part. If I come back to 0, I have black again. If I then do the blue slider up to 255, I get pure blue back. If I come all the way up to green here, 255, pure green, those are the corners. All the way inside of this cube, though, you make up all the other colors. So this cube, it's three-dimensional. There is a unique point for every color. Color is now defined by location, which is critical for communication for us. This is now the flip side of it. So now I've just flipped the cube, so the corner that we were looking at is all the way in the back there that you can't see. Does that make sense, everybody? From an illustration point of view. So again, red on that cube back there started in that corner, and this was the pure red. This was the pure blue, and this was the pure green. But if you bring all of those together at their maximum intensity, this corner up here is white. So you need 3 dimensions to have this described. You can't do it in 2. And that's why they call them color spaces. So again, the last thing I'll show you here, and this is the last slide, and then we'll go. And this is the critical part. In color communication, if I said to you, oh yeah, give me something that's kind of bluish yellow. Well, you would have some idea of what that was, but would you be able to actually replicate the exact color I had in my mind? No. So those terms are meaningless in color. So what all color systems do now today is they do color by location. So those 3 values that we put into the color picker, here, let's go back to the color picker really quickly. 51, 153, and 205, 4. Just go back to your color picker and click on the foreground color thing really quick. And we're going to type in 53, and then, oh shit. In the red, 53, tab key, I think it's 153 and 204. 153 for the green, tab key 204. This is now the color. That is the color that I picked. Every person in this room has this exact color. I'm not telling you to give me a cyanic kind of colorish something, I'm not describing it that way. I'm giving you a location, and the location is identical for everybody in this room, but also for everybody in the whole world. So color stops becoming ambiguous. We don't say, oh, it's kind of red. We can actually label it by its location because we have color space. Does this make sense? All right, guys. I'm going to leave it there. The homework should be relatively easy. Please get the software installed, and I'll see you guys next week. Any questions about this?